Does anybody want to be chairperson in Ms. Tommy's absence tonight?
Why me?
You're in the seat. You're the head of the table.
What do I say again?
Just call us to order, please.
And I'd like to call us to order here on June 21st.
I will call roll. Mr. Sins?
Here.
Mr. Hoffman?
Present.
Ms. DeWitt?
Here.
Ms. Tommy? Mr. Evans?
Here.
Will you ask for approval of the agenda and the minutes?
Approval of the agenda and minutes. Anyone?
We motion?
Second.
Yep.
Sins?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
DeWitt?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Thank you. Moving into reports, most of what I have to update tonight is being covered by Jenton about the 4th of July. Also want to let everybody know phase 2 of the roundabout started last week. It is on schedule. And also we are currently hiring for an economic development coordinator at the village. If you know anybody interested, it's posted on the website. This person will be responsible for business retention, expansion, and bringing new companies into the village as the residential growth happens. That's all. Council, any updates you'd like to provide?
I don't have any specific updates.
Okay, she hung up on the phone. She must not have been able to hear. She's watching online now.
How many years experience have you looking for with that?
And it's not entry level. We want someone with a good knowledge base, but it's not quite like a directorship either. So someone somewhat mid-level career.
Yeah, that's good opportunity.
All right, there's no unfinished business. I'll go ahead and move into new business if that's okay.
Sure.
I've invited Fire Marshal Brian Adams here tonight. Not sure if you've had the chance to meet him, but he's over at Pleasant Valley. They are working on an emergency management communication system that townships, the village, local municipalities could partner with, all use the same system. It would be used for things like village-wide boil alerts, tornadoes, incoming, really, really high-level emergency communications. So fire department has taken on the responsibility of exploring what options are out there, what an agreement would look like, and I just wanted to ask for an update and if there's anything we can do to help or any input we could provide.
Yeah. So for those that obviously I haven't had a chance to meet before, if you're not aware, so the fire district obviously is a fire district, so we're not part of the village itself. So we're responsible for 5 different communities. So Canaan Township and Madison County, Darby Township and Madison County, the village, Darby Township and Union County, and then Unionville Center, which is out a little bit in Union County. So one of the challenges that we ran into was emergency notifications for, obviously the village has tornado sirens, things like that, but not the most effective way of notifying people when there are emergencies. Number one, you have to be outside. That's the purpose of the sirens, are for people that are outside. So you're not supposed to be able to hear them in your house. Obviously, a lot of people in the village can't, but we also have a large area that we're responsible for that it's not feasible to have sirens anyway. So we started looking at different options for emergency notification and found out that the village was also kind of had started that process. So, I started working with Heidi from the village with looking at different options. So we've looked at multiple providers out there, and it's kind of a matter of what you want it to do. The discussion through the fire department, so the way the fire department works is there's a board that represents or runs the fire district, essentially, so there's a representative from each jurisdiction. So Mr. Sentz is the representative from the village for the fire board, then each of the townships has a representative. Some of the discussions were, maybe we could share the cost, or just, are there multiple benefits to just the fire department trying to do something on their own, and that's how all this kind of came to be. So a couple of the options that I've looked at, the fire department's looked at and evaluated, go from the very basic, where it's essentially people have to sign up for alerts and notifications, and it's just very simplistic. You type in a message and it sends it out to the people that have, it's almost like an email list, essentially, that kind of thing. We don't really want to go that simplistic, given the cost. There are a couple other options you probably heard of, or maybe heard of. Code Red is one of the providers. HyperReach is another one that actually have multiple layers. So the emergency notification piece of it is obviously most important to us, is how the emergency notifications go out. Both of those providers, those emergency notifications go out. Cell phones, landlines, social media, so Facebook, Instagram, you can sign up to have kind of alerts on your desktop at home. There's multiple ways to get those alerts to go out. The other piece to that is how they get the information. So there's a lot of readily available information that companies use. So for the landline piece of it, one of the benefits to HyperReach and Code Red is that they utilize the 911 database. So every landline that's in the county is kind of registered with the 911 center. So all that stuff gets automatically put in. Cell phones. So I'm sure everybody's been somewhere where you get a Amber Alert. The Amber Alerts that come over your cell phones, you don't register for any of that. It's basically one of those alerts that, as long as you're in an area where the alert is sent out and you're close to one of the cell phone towers, it's got to come to your cell phone, kind of thing. So that's kind of what we're looking at. There are a lot of additional benefits beyond just the emergency communication. So there's levels. Haley mentioned boil advisories. There are things that the village would have the ability to use. The benefit in talking to some of these providers is having the fire district kind of be the parent of the organization that kind of purchases the agreement. The pricing seems to be a lot less than what other government entities may be. In doing so, we would have the ability, though, to kind of create sub-accounts. So while the fire department, fire district would be kind of the main parent of the account, we can set up a Plant City, where Haley, the police chief, whatever the village decides to use it for, would have the ability to use that. So, and it can go beyond. There are ways to set it up for registration. So it's kind of like, I'm assuming the app, when you register for the app and things like that, you can log in and request non-emergency communications too. So, the village would have the opportunity to use it for things beyond boil advisories if they want. Another benefit to some of these are two-way communications. So there's ways that, if there's an issue from an emergency standpoint for us, if there's an issue in an area of the village or an area of the fire district, we can send communication out and people can confirm, if there's damage, if there's, need for resources, things like that on it's a two-way communication. So, and then everything's verifiable. So we can see where all the alerts go out to, who gets the alerts, their text, voice, like I said, email, social media. The other piece to the kind of the two main ones that have kind of topped the list are, especially the weather warnings, weather alerts, all that's automatic. So there's nothing that some particular person would have to do if there's a tornado warning and you're in the polygon that the Weather Service kind of puts out, then you're gonna get that alert. And it's gonna do, you know, when we set it up, it'll do all those things simultaneously. So tornado warning, if you're in that area, it's gonna show up on your Facebook feed, it's gonna show up, you know, you can get a notification through your cell phone, you can get a notification on your landline, all that stuff's gonna happen automatically. So obviously when there's severe weather, you know, there's a lot of different things going on. Having the ability to send out a notification and have somebody, you know, from the village try to update, you know, the Facebook account or, you know, Instagram or any of those other ones, you know, having the ability for all that to just happen automatically, I think is beneficial. The cost, like I said, they vary. The one that's kind of, I'll say, what I've kind of focused on is HyperReach, just because they're not the most expensive. They're kind of right in the middle, but they have the features that you would expect from some of the other vendors. So basically, so for all of the fire district, it's $5,450 a year is a subscription cost. What kind of drove this initially was, I mentioned Unionville Center being one of the jurisdictions that we cover. They have a tornado siren out there. The question came up, who maintains that siren? It's just kind of existed over time, and, you know, historically, I think some people from the fire department have gone out and done some repairs on it, but it's never been something, they don't have the money to maintain it. So the cost to kind of upgrade something like that, I don't know how many sirens the village has, outside sirens, but the cost to replace one of those are multiples of that. And then again, you're back to that original conversation of, well, the purpose of those are for people who are outside, you know, at this point. So the $5,000 annually, you know, for us is what we're looking at. I think is whether or not, and, you know, Mr. Sentz may have a better handle on this just from the board's perspective. It sounds like it may be something that the fire district is looking at, and then any of the member jurisdictions that want to contribute to that, so that, you know, it's kind of borne by everyone, and then everyone would have the ability to use it.
And I just have a question, and I'm sure this will be later down the road, but I'm just curious, at that price, is that, I know a lot of the systems are modular, and does that include all the modules that you're looking at? Okay.
Yeah. And that's so, and like I said, I've gone through and looked, if any of you, historically, the Union County Sheriff's Office had Nixle for a long time. It's another, you know, there's like buying a car, there's multiple providers out there. They stopped using it based, at least my understanding is the cost became too much for what they were doing. Nixle was purchased by Everbridge, which is another company that does this. So there are, like I said, they're the low budget, don't really do anything other than you have people, you know, kind of sign up and you can send out text messages to the HyperReach is basically the account that would allow us to do everything that we would want to do.
Does HyperReach connect into the 911 database? So they're
So they get that information. Some of it's actually kind of scary from just not scary, but just listening to where they collect the information that, you know, they kind of start and help populate their database, you know, credit reporting in different places that, you know, they have a lot of the information already. So that's helpful to us. So a lot of that is useful for the emergency notification piece of it. So, you know, we don't necessarily have to ask permission to send out those emergency notifications for things that are, you know, a tanker truck rolls over in the middle of town on 161, you know, that kind of thing. We need to distribute that information. That's not necessarily a service that we only want people who have signed up for it to get those notifications. So that's kind of the benefit of the higher price, I guess I'll say. you're only talking the difference of, you know, kind of the basic send out text message kind of things. I mean, you're still talking $200 to $2,500. It's, you know, so that's kind of where we're at. And I think at this point, I mean, if we're moving forward, probably best to sit down with whether it's Haley or you know, one of the council, Mr. Sense, whoever, and actually get the presentation from HyperReach. They can do another one just to kind of go over some of those features to make sure that they make sense to you. But from our standpoint, it definitely is going to be very useful and very, very helpful to get some of that information out. And like I said, most of the information, like the weather stuff, happens automatically once we set it up. So it's not like we have to.
So, quick question. That overlaps a little bit with some of the app the village has. Is that something that can be either consolidated or one or the other turned off just to avoid duplication, or would that just be on the person's end to shut it off on one source or the other?
And I think that's and again, it's my understanding of the system and how it works. Like I said, you have kind of, I'll say, 2 tiers of information. So you have the emergency information that, you know, if there's a tornado coming through, I'm okay if I get it from a couple different sources if the app goes off. But if there's some notification, again, they even talk about communities that use it for farmers market notifications and stuff like that, that the app, you know, probably has a lot of that information on. That's information that residents would kind of opt into.
Yeah.
So they would be able to choose, like, no, I just want emergency notifications. I've got the app for all this other stuff.
I think where Shane's going with this question is, we've got the Plain City app that has all of those things in it, you know, that has all of the emergency notification that we get from weather, and we can do all those alerts, and then there's gonna be this. Would we turn one or the other? I think that's just open for discussion.
I
Whether
think
it's integration or whether we.
and one of the other benefits is the emergency notification piece of it. The Plain City app, you have to download it and sign up for it, have access to it.
Right.
This would kind of be a fail-safe, so you'll have people that will still get the notifications even if so the people that have no interest in the Plain City app and they don't want the community information, we still want the ability to give them emergency information if something's happening. So I think that's the difference between the two, is the Plain City app is an opt-in, whereas this is more of an opt for the emergency notifications.
I'm just curious, how does that work? Is it ping every cell phone in the area?
Yeah, so it's based, again, my understanding, listening to the presentations, but based on cell towers. So if you're in proximity to a cell tower that gets put in, so, you know, some of the examples they gave, missing children and things like that, you know, I can draw a box, we can isolate just Darby Fields, you know, a neighborhood, the uptown area. I can draw a box around the uptown area because we have some type of gas leak, some type of other emergency, and it's only gonna notify that small group of people. Yeah, so it's much more specific than, again, going back to the app is, you know, first of all, people have to download it and sign up for it. And it's, that's for the cell phone users, and then the 911, the landlines for, you know, I don't know how many people still have landlines, apparently there's a fair amount, but also the social media piece of it. So it's just like Facebook, you know, the advertising, if you've ever messed with any of that, I mean, you can go in and draw circles around areas that you want to communicate with, same kind of things.
We have a similar product at my work, and we don't use all of its features, but nobody installs the app, right? We just use it for building shutdowns or whatever. We send out alerts via text and via phone call. So they'll get a phone call and say, you know, here's a OPERS alert, and it's a robot voice that speaks, and then they'll also get a text. So that's really nice, and we can opt in. Well, we can't, but in the village, you'd be able to opt in and out of those types of messages, and then the emergency emergency ones would be like, you're getting it.
When you really, I mean, and like I said, you know, as much information as I can retain and get from a, you know, just a 30-minute presentation from each of the providers, you know, HyperReach was one where, like I mentioned, that two-way communication, you know, there's also ways for the village, you know, the public works staff and things like that to be able to communicate and for them to get an alert and then just confirm, yes, I've got it, you know, or, you know, yes, I'm, you know, responding back to work without having to make a bunch of phone calls. You can, you know, somebody can send information out, yes, I got it, I'm responding. There's conferencing abilities, so everybody has the same phone number. If there's a disaster, you know, communication, things like that, you know, it's just all set up ahead of time, so. There's a lot to it. I mean, like I said, those are kind of the high points. Like I said, it's just like everything else. There's a lot more that, and you know, maybe it becomes more or less beneficial than some of the information in the app to people. You know,
And most, I can't speak for HyperReach, but most of them have APIs that allow you to, so it's possible, I don't know what the relationship is with our app vendor, but it's possible that there might be a tie-in that they may be able to hook that piece in with this so that there's not duplicates. I can't speak to that, but it's certainly something worth entertaining. It wouldn't be free, but someone would have to program the API. Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Fire Marshal, any other?
Tier 1 provider, I think HyperReach is too. So.
Yeah. There's, you know, we started getting into it. It's like there's so many.
Then there's smaller companies that buy services from the bigger companies.
Right.
And like,
It's
and you're like, no, I want the ones that have the information.
right. It's I mean, it's like cell phone companies. You've got Verizon, you know,
Yeah.
Sprint, or not, I guess not Sprint anymore, but T-Mobile and AT&T, and then you've also got, you know, all the straight talk and the same kind of thing. So we're good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What,
Fire district kind of item, I would also send it to the different entities, and then just do one presentation, and then at that point.
what's your desired timeline for wanting to see something like this implemented? Or I should say the fire districts, but maybe.
Just kind of given the status and where the district is, I mean, probably by our forward meeting in August, I would think. I mean, that gives us a month and a half to kind of figure things out, make sure everybody is comfortable with the product, and then, you know, I think, again, not speaking for the fire board, but it sounded like they would be interested or okay with maybe being the parent provider and, you know, doing the agreement and then working out the member entities that want to take advantage of it, you know. For the emergency piece of it, if we buy it, we're going to use it for everybody regardless of how that works, but.
I can't speak for everybody, but my dream would be, or my preference would be to have something before we get into inclement weather season. You know, that we have something that we could use if there was some, you know.
And obviously, we're kind of in the middle of that now, so the sooner the better.
I guess I mean winter inclement weather. Where
Yeah.
I guess there can always be inclement weather.
Yeah. So.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. I'm gonna hang out for a minute. I'll just listen. It's too hot to work outside.
If I go home, I have to put in grass.
I did all that yesterday when it wasn't quite as hot.
All right, next up from the marketing piece of the meeting, Denton Kitts is our new parks assistant. He just started at the village a few weeks ago. He will be in charge of programming, along with a million other things for our parks department. Denton comes from Columbus Metro Parks, where he has experience thinking of ideas, implementing them, advertising them, pulling them off, and then closing them out. So he's already hit the ground running. He can help with as well.
Cool.
So yeah, this year, village kind of in conjunction with fire department, police department, we're gonna be making several changes to how kind of the whole event goes.